Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into a pretty wild viral video that lays out a case for how one company, BlackRock, is supposedly executing a massive plan to control the foundational assets of our entire world.
Wow. Okay, so let's just jump right in, shall we? The source we're examining makes some absolutely staggering claims, starting with this idea that BlackRock CEO Larry Fink wields power that's pretty much on par with a head of state. Now, to understand how anyone could even make a claim like that, we actually have to go way back to a moment of spectacular failure.
So to really get a grip on BlackRock's present-day power, the source argues we have to rewind the clock, back to a single, career-defining mistake made by its founder, Larry Fink.
Larry Fink's rise on Wall Street was just meteoric. He joins First Boston, and in no time, he's a superstar. He becomes the firm's youngest ever managing director. This is the guy who pioneered mortgage-backed securities. These super complex things that bundle up thousands of home loans and sell them to investors. He was so good at it, making over $1 billion for the firm, that everyone thought he was the next in line for CEO.
But then, it all came crashing down. Fink made this huge bet that interest rates were going to go up. They didn't. They cratered. And because of one tiny miscalculation in his financial hedge, basically his insurance policy, his department lost $100 million. Overnight, he was totally mortified, and pretty soon, he was out of a job.
They say failure is the best teacher. And for Fink, according to the source, this wasn't just a failure. It was a career-defining humiliation. It taught him one crucial lesson. He had been taking these extraordinary risks without really understanding them. And right then and there, he vowed to master risk, convinced that whoever controls risk, well, they control the entire game.
So Fink's out of a job, but he's armed with this brand new philosophy. He gets together a team of 8 all-stars, and in 1988, he convinces Blackstone's Stephen Schwarzman to give him $5 million to start a new firm, one built from the ground up around one thing: managing risk. And they called it BlackRock.
Now, the success of this new company wasn't just built on people. It was built on a secret weapon, a really sophisticated piece of software they named Aladdin. And this wasn't just some program. It was designed to be the central nervous system for their entire investment universe.
And you've got to understand, Aladdin wasn't just some fancy spreadsheet. It was basically a crystal ball for finance. It could run endless simulations asking what if. What if interest rates shoot up? What if a bunch of mortgages in Florida start to default? Aladdin could give them answers almost instantly, letting BlackRock see dangers that were basically invisible to everyone else.
And this is where it really paid off. In 1994, the bond market just imploded. It was called the Great Bond Market Massacre. Firms were getting wiped out. But BlackRock, they barely flinched. Aladdin had warned them of the risks way ahead of time. The signal to the rest of Wall Street was loud and clear. When things get ugly, you call BlackRock.
So this reputation for being the smartest guys in the room when it comes to risk, well, it put them in the perfect spot to capitalize on the biggest financial meltdown in generations, the 2008 crisis.
Think about it. The entire global financial system is on fire, burning down because of these toxic mortgage assets. And who's the guy who literally helped invent them? Larry Fink. So when the U.S. government needed someone to clean up the mess, who do you think they called? Him. The Treasury Secretary at the time, Tim Geithner, was apparently calling him nonstop. This gave Fink unbelievable access and influence at the very highest levels of power. Okay, so after the dust settled, the government tried to make sure this would never happen again. They passed new rules, creating this systemically important or too big to fail label for any firm whose collapse could wreck the economy. But here's the kicker. Our source highlights how BlackRock went on this massive lobbying blitz to make sure they didn't get that label. Their argument? Hey, we just manage other people's money, so our failure isn't a systemic risk. And you know what? It worked.
And this influence, the source claims, gets locked in through what's known as the revolving door. We're talking about a constant flow of people moving between BlackRock and key government agencies like the Treasury and the Fed. And it's not just a U.S. thing. They've hired dozens of former officials from all over the world. The argument is that this creates a system that doesn't just favor BlackRock's interests, it blurs the very line between public service and private profit.
So with their power in Washington pretty much cemented, BlackRock sets its sights on a new frontier, shaping how corporations all over the world behave. They become this huge champion for ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance investing. But that whole thing got really controversial. And after facing backlash from all sides, the source says Fink quietly pivoted to a brand new, much more tangible prize.
And, I mean, just look at these numbers. It's a dramatic shift. After years of pushing this stuff, BlackRock's support for ESG-related shareholder proposals just falls off a cliff, down from almost half to just 4%. Fink himself even said he was ashamed to be part of the ESG conversation, basically calling it a political weapon.
So with ESG now basically a political headache, Fink pivots. He sets his sights on what the source calls the next big game. And this one is absolutely massive. We're talking about the estimated $68 trillion global infrastructure market that's needed by the year 2040.
So why infrastructure? Well, our source calls it the bloodlines of modern civilization, and that's a perfect way to put it. This is the stuff we all have to use every single day. The roads, the airports, the power grids, the water pipes, you can't just opt out. So whoever owns these things controls an essential monopoly with guaranteed customers and super stable long-term profits.
And listen, BlackRock isn't just talking about this stuff. They are making moves, big moves. In January 2024, they dropped $12.5 billion to buy a company called Global Infrastructure Partners. In one single deal, they instantly become one of the biggest private owners of infrastructure on the planet.
Okay, and this all leads us to what is probably the most alarming claim in the entire analysis we're breaking down. The idea that BlackRock's new strategy positions it to make money from global events, no matter if those events are peaceful or incredibly violent.
So the argument here is that BlackRock has built a business model where it basically can't lose. It's set up to win whether there's peace or whether there's war. How? Well, on one side, it owns huge stakes in defense companies that make more money when wars break out and the demand for weapons goes up. And on the other side, it positions itself to lead the massive, multi-billion-dollar reconstruction efforts that have to happen after the fighting stops.
And the source we're examining points to Ukraine as the perfect case study for this. I mean, while the war is still raging, Larry Fink himself is striking a deal to advise Ukraine on how to rebuild their country. A BlackRock-backed fund gets created to handle all the money, putting the firm right at the center of one of the biggest rebuilding efforts since World War II.
And here's how this model supposedly works so well. The source claims it often uses public money, your money, taxpayer money, to de-risk the whole thing for private investors. This means governments or institutions could be on the hook for any losses, while firms like BlackRock and their clients get to pocket the profits from these giant rebuilding projects.
So that leaves us right here with the final, pretty unsettling question posed by the source material. By positioning itself to control the absolute essential building blocks of our society, what happens when a single company's business model is set up to thrive on both global stability and global chaos?